All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Puget Systems Podcast. This episode, we are joined by founder and president of Puget Systems, Jon Bach. As usual, I don't know that this is really necessary for you, but I do always like to stay consistent. As usual, I'd like to have the guest introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. So Take it away.
All right. Well, love being on here again. It's always a good time. The hour always flies by talking with you, Houston. So this is great. So I'm founder and president of Puget Systems. Started the business 24 years ago when I was beardless and younger, and been on a long journey through consumer PCs, gaming PCs, workstations, and now even beyond workstations. Just continuing to take the technology that we have access to and we know and love, and take it to these customers and industries and whole areas that need help, because technology is a mess and it never works right. And we view it as our mission to make it work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have to say, that's probably one of my favorite things about working here is the sort of no nonsense approach. There's no bloatware on the machines. There's no crazy fancy lights or just no extraneous anything that doesn't help to get the job done. And sure. I think that is super cool.
Well, we anchor ourselves in that by just being so connected to our customers, and really makes it easier to be empathetic to, like, they're not just like a revenue stream to be exploited. It's where we want to go in and help, and then earn a living doing that. But the more that we can empathize with our customers, the more it makes it easy to just be like, well, what would we want? Let's make sure we give that to our customers.
Yeah. And so the main focus for this episode will be kind of a look back at the year 2024, because there's been some very tumultuous times. The Intel microcode stuff, I think even early days with tariffs and GPU shortages, a little less of that this year, but it still ripples across the industry. AI now is really blowing up in every facet. It's everywhere, from the software to the hardware to data centers, all this stuff. And so that'll then lead into looking to the future ahead. And so
sure.
Is there anything that stands out in particular this year that I suppose that happened, and then how we handled it?
Well, I mean, there's things that we had going on that we had as our goals for this year, and I think that was actually even more impactful on our time and energy and resources than what happened in the industry. But a lot happened in the industry too. I mean, I don't know if I can even. It feels like some of it feels like lifetimes ago, but certainly really the stability issues through the Intel Raptor Lake stability issues. That was like an ongoing saga that just kept unfolding. Thankful that it seems as if that's in our rearview mirror now. But I think so we had to spend quite a bit of time and energy on that, and we can certainly talk about it. But the bigger story for us for this year was I just gave an all hands where we talked about this internally. But last year, so 2023, was a lot about what can we do to expand like the value we can bring out to the world in our expertise. And for the last 10 years, it had been on your desk tower workstations. It was our limit of focus. But the world just isn't that nice and neat anymore. There's a lot more need for being on the go. There's a lot more need for centralizing that IT back into the server room, whether that's cloud or on-prem servers. And so our journey for the last few years has been expanding into servers and storage, and we're calling them rack stations. I like that we have a word for it. I don't know if we invented that word, but I like that we have a word for it. Yeah, I like it. So rack stations, it's literally just a workstation. You tip it over and you stick it in a server rack, and it's a rack station, which obviously like we're very well equipped to do. But it helps address the needs that we're seeing from our customers, especially through COVID, through more hybrid workers, of saying, well, no, there is not just a desk with a computer for a person anymore. It's a lot more complicated than that. So that's been our journey, has been to expand our expertise into all those different types of products, which makes us very tired because it's a lot of work to do. But for our customers, it means that we can say yes to helping them in a lot of different ways. So we can be a bigger part of a bigger solution, which is helpful. So that, if you have to ask, like, where did all of our time and energy go? It was to that. And then we have Raptor Lake issues and SSD issues and other things that try to steal our time and attention from our mission, but have to happen because we have to provide, good, stable computers.
Right. Yeah, that's important. Reliability first, then performance is a very close second. They kind of go hand in hand, but again, I like that. That's how we focus on that.
And that's very clear across the company. That if you start sacrificing reliability, it's out of bounds at Puget, because it only takes one blue screen, one reboot. Like, I don't care if you squeezed out another 3% performance. It doesn't matter if the computer's 3% faster if you lose your work once a week to a blue screen. So stability first.
So I kind of am going in a couple different directions, but I do want to touch on the Raptor Lake, the microcode Intel thing a little bit, because from what I recall, we as a company had noticed something a little funny about that even before our enthusiast compatriots, before it became a really mainstream problem. I know that we were doing special power settings and things like that, even I think in the 12th and 11th gen even. And I guess it wasn't as big of an issue then.
Well,
can you speak on that a little bit?
I have to be honest, so many things happened that I have to rewind my head. Okay, where were we 9 months ago on this? I think the challenge was it would have been really nice if the stability issues were there was a thing that if you fixed that thing, then it was fixed. And it turned out to be at least 3 different things. And so, yes, pieces of that we definitely saw for years. I know you've been very vocal about this as well. Other pieces of it we didn't see.
Sure.
And so let's talk about why. So, one piece that we did see was, power management settings with the motherboard providers in general have been a mess. And they've been a mess for a long time. And I think it was even, was it 12th gen where it started to get crazy?
I know we put an article out about how the power management, the branded power management features were, I don't want to say not good, but they were maybe not in line with our philosophy, I suppose is a better way of putting it.
Yeah. And so, that was definitely what got on our radar the fastest. Now it's misrepresenting the problem to say that was the problem, but that was a problem. And if anything, that kind of masked the discovery of the greater issue because there was so much Wild West stuff going on in there. So it's hard to even fault the motherboard manufacturers because everyone wants to bring their own special, goodness to their product. I know it's all in fashion to be hard on Intel. I'm not trying to jump on that bandwagon, but in this case, I think that we really needed more leadership from Intel in this case to say, I don't care what you want to do with this. This is our product. It is run at these specifications. A lot of clarity around that, and that was leadership that was missing in that situation. Now we tried to provide some leadership there sometimes, and we don't have that big of a voice. Honestly, maybe we have more voice than I think, but. We would end up helping through tech reviewer sites to try to amplify the message of saying guys, we got to get these power profile settings figured out. Now, the way that we handled that with our products is we said, I don't care what Asus does, Gigabyte, MSI, Supermicro, anyone. We're going to look at what Intel says is a spec, and we are going to follow that spec. Now, that's where it became apparent to us that okay, but even Intel is being squishy with what the spec is. So we had to apply a lot of our judgment to it. And that's what we did. And we did a lot of testing based on the actual workloads in post-production and visual effects and scientific computing, where we could say, all right, we're going to err on the side of conservative in this area. We're going to be aggressive in this area. And we're going to kind of turn those knobs until we had a product that we felt was running at the temperatures and stability that we require, while not overly sacrificing on performance. And we would typically think margin of error here, 1 or 2% is something that we would consider acceptable trade-off for 10 degrees lower temperatures. And so that's what we did for a number of years. And the weird scenario that happened is that now, as we go through this year, and the Raptor Lake stability issues caused more scrutiny to be put on the spec, the power specs on the motherboards, that has come a long way in getting more locked down. It also means that because our approach is to say, no, we're going to follow manufacturer specs, we will exercise our judgment within those specs, but we're not going to go out of bounds. That's like overclocking. It's not a road we want to go down. We don't want to sacrifice stability for the sake of performance. But Intel specs have come in more aggressive than our specs. And so there's a weird twist where we actually are seeing higher temperatures under the new specifications because we don't have as much authority to turn those knobs and find out where, we can pull down the power, but it doesn't impact performance, because we still want to stay true to our approach of saying, no. We follow the manufacturer spec. So that's where we're at. So that was a piece of it. And that's definitely a piece that's been on our radar for a long time, years. And if anything, that was masking the fact that we did not see as high a failure rate as others, with the actual flaws that were in the microcode and perhaps even physical product. Because of the way that we had approached that, we saw muted. Our experience was muted through that process. So that did a couple things. One, we didn't see the problem as much, which is great. Just have to be thankful for that. But it also meant that as these fixes came out, it wasn't as much of like an emergency, we have to roll this out now type of situation. And that worked out in our favor unknowingly, because what ended up happening was Intel would roll out this fix, and then a couple of weeks later, roll out the fix to the fix or another fix. And then a couple of weeks later, another fix on top of the fixes. And just about the time that we would get to the all right, I think we're ready to put our name behind this and roll this out as a fix, another one would come out. And we'd say, start over. And that worked out okay because we didn't put our customers through 1, 2, 3 fixes. We put them through one fix. So that has now rolled out to our customers. And it did not come at a great cost to the longevity of our customer computers because of the configurations we had shipped those computers in. So, it could have been worse. It definitely could have been worse. It was still a whole lot of time. It enveloped half of our year. But it was not like a red alert. We have a big problem with our products like some other stuff.
Sure. I'm curious, and this is just, if I guess maybe gut or just off the top of your head, we've obviously must have quite a number of systems out there with the 13th, 14th gen CPUs, but considering we kind of had this sort of buffer in place already, that we were already sort of following the guidelines as it is, how many people have kind of stepped up and said oh, my stuff might be melting?
I'd have to actually
put you on
run
the
some
spot
reports to find out.
Okay.
But it's so I can't quote numbers, but I can say that we've noticed that it's elevated, but not at a level that stresses anyone out here. So it's enough that it's on our radar, but it's I don't want to say run a business, but it kind of is. We always see a certain failure rate of product that comes through, and this rate is close enough to our normal rate that we're just absorbing it into our normal processes. And so that's our current process. So I don't want to say, I know I put a blog post up about this and I caught a lot of heat for being, an Intel super fan, but really it's because our experience has been so muted as compared to what the rest of the industry or what many others in the industry saw. So yeah, elevated, but not terrible. And it led us to have a pretty high amount of confidence to just extending the warranty on our computers, so that it's just a way of transferring the confidence we already had of saying to our customers, no, it'll be okay. We feel confident in taking care of you. So yeah, that's our current approach, and currently nothing's blowing up, and it seems like that's kind of fading into a little bit of a yesterday issue.
Cool. That's good. I'm glad. It was fun to see in some of the social media stuff when I hesitate to name names, because not that I'm saying anything bad or anything, but just out of respect for our cohorts in the industry, seeing some of the social media posts that, for fixes, hey, make these BIOS setting changes, and I see them oh, we've been doing that since 2016, that kind of thing. It's this kind of, it's just cool to see that our philosophy helped kind of keep us ahead of this, and other issues too. As you had mentioned SSDs earlier, there was a weird thing with what was it, the 980 Pros, the Samsung
980 Pros. Was that this year? Was that really this year? Maybe
I'm not entirely sure. But it
it's
was
the
just
same.
another example. Yeah.
Exactly. It's another example. And we have this struggle sometimes with our hardware partners where we're faster to, or I guess earlier to sound the alarm bells
Mhm.
on batch manufacturing issues or something. And man, the number of times I hear no one else is reporting that, it must just be you. And I have to be careful not to become too cynical of like, well, okay, wait 2 months, you'll hear it from other people as well. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't want to paint an overlay picture like we're the technology masters that know everything. We learned a ton through the Raptor Lake stability issues. We know more as a company. I'd love to say I know more, but I have to be more like our R&D team knows more about power settings than we ever thought was possible a few years ago. So it's less that like we know everything, because we definitely don't, and it's more that just like our conservatism in general pays off more often than not in general.
Yeah. No. And again, I think that is, it's really awesome. And I think the especially the enthusiast in market, the enthusiast side of all of this, could take a little learning from that. I think
Well,
it's the constant chase for a bigger number and
yeah.
stuff. But that's a personal thing for me.
Well, and that's baked into the whole industry. And I think all of us, like the collective we, like the world, is
Mhm.
ready for things to be less crazy. I
Yeah.
don't really need a 50% bump in performance year after year if that comes with doubling the wattage or something nuts. In fact, having the more we talk about our laptops, so like a laptop is a place where we have to have a lot more compromise over, like I can't just dump 600 watts into the GPU in a laptop, so you have to compromise, right? And to see that you can do things like lower the wattage by 50% and you give up 5% performance, it just shows you how crazy things have gotten in the
Right.
chase of like that bigger number all the time.
Yeah. Perfect segue. Actually, we introduced laptops again this year, and
Yep.
it's been a pretty good success. It feels, from what I've been able to tell,
Yeah.
it seems like it's been taken well from our customer base and whatnot. There's been hubbub that we started at the very, very high end. This is a like $4,500 laptop. This is a desktop replacement. I have one myself. It is a desktop replacement machine. This isn't something you're working on Blender on the train kind of thing. But
Yeah.
so with that success, there's been chitter chatter that we might be looking at a few steps down. Can you speak on that a little? I know
Yeah.
some of that's still being worked on and whatnot, but you had a really great trip off to Thailand and China just a little bit ago that I think was related to that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I talk about it. So, first of all, like the secret in the industry is that unless you are enormous, you're not contracting with a factory to make laptops from scratch. So the way that this industry tends to work is that you have a number of laptop providers that specialize in being OEMs to channel providers such as Puget Systems, but really thousands of other providers. And that's no different than almost anything else. Power supplies, motherboards. Unless you're like at a Dell, HP, Lenovo level, you're probably not designing your own motherboards. And so we're in that same camp. And so we were in laptops for a long time. I remember making laptops when I first started the company, but we actually walked away from laptops in, was that 2014, something like that. And we did that because at that time and at that capability and at that size that we did not feel that we were having the impact that we would require of ourselves to be in those types of products in terms of actually making things better. And so we got into laptops last year because speaking with a number of different manufacturers overseas, we actually could affect for positive change. And I'm super fulfilled. I shared this at the All Hands as well today. Super fulfilled that one of the first things we found in our testing was that they got the power profiles wrong for post-production type work. It was, I can't remember the details specifically, but it was starving the quick sync portion of the CPU in favor of giving more power to the GPU, which in the case of post-production work was like hugely impacting the performance of like Adobe Premiere and DaVinci Resolve. And so we were able to work with the factory to make a tweak to the BIOS profiles, and it was like free performance. It just by configuring it better. Those are the stories I like to tell because that's where our expertise and our familiarity with the workloads lets us provide input into the industry that who knows how many years that had just been sitting there as a problem. So I love being able to tell those stories. And now, the follow on is, all right, now that we're a year in talking with these factories, we are having an impact in shaping their product features, even their product like appearance, how they balance noise, power, heat, those types of things. So that's great. I mean, that's a success story is we're not out there designing our own laptops from scratch, but we are influencing an entire ecosystem towards what our customers value. And that's even better in my mind.
Right. That is super cool, especially for a relatively small company like us. Like we are still like 65, 67 employees.
Mm-hmm.
We're small beans compared to some of our compatriots in this. So it is really cool to be able to have that sort of effect on the whole like industry or hardware industry, which is it's a big fish to.
Yeah. Well,
cool.
And we have to leave our egos at the door because of the size of saying, like, we're not going to make this as an only us product. We're making this as something that it doesn't matter how this ends up coming to an end user, it would still get that benefit. So anyway, with the confidence of that first pass having that real pinnacle laptop, our next step is to say, all right, let's have a couple tiers now, because does everyone really need like the most insane version? No. Most actually need something that is a little bit more compromised, where maybe it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit more trade-off on performance, but you get way better battery life. It's a lot more just sustainable of a laptop. So that's the next step for us. It's too early to say, what we're doing or who we're going with or what we're offering, because the nature of my trip out to Thailand just a few weeks ago was to meet with factory after factory after factory representative to try to find out which one of those partnerships is right for us. Came back with a real solid ABC list. And so we're going through sampling phases and talking with them, but looks pretty good. I'm feeling pretty confident that we will be able to bring another product to market that will meet even more people's needs. And frankly, like where there is so much compromise in laptops makes it even more impactful for us. Same as like the power settings we talked about with Intel issues. When you have to turn a knob to figure out, power versus performance, that's where we shine the most, because that's where it's most important.
Yeah. So before we segue to the next topic, because I think the laptop to the next thing is a good connection, I wanted to grab this question from Twitch. Weirdo98 asks, do you guys think Intel's still good for gaming, even with the stability issues and worse performance than an AMD CPU? And do you think Intel's new processors, that'd be the Core Ultra stuff, be worth upgrading to for gaming?
Well, it depends on what you're upgrading from. And I guess the answer of the whole Intel versus AMD thing, I think I'll speak more to our philosophy than answering that question more directly. The problem is, anytime I answer that question directly, I'm a shill one company and I'm an enemy another, and that's just not true. Anytime there's new technology that comes out or new software revisions that come out, so less for gaming and more for like a new version of DaVinci Resolve, we will redo all the testing. We will let the results speak for themselves, and that just shapes where we go. And sometimes we have to pivot. So, in fact, as I sit down with AMD and Intel, oftentimes what I'll show them is like what their market share is with us, and it's because I treat them the same. I will tell AMD when they're behind and why they're behind and what they need to do to improve, and I'll say the same thing to Intel. And it's fight for the ground, and that's all just based on performance. So. I think that the new Intel Core Ultras do have a lot to be excited about, with like the new NPUs in there and the focus on power efficiency, both on Intel and AMD with the latest generation. As to which one comes out on top for like performance per dollar, I'd have to direct you back to our articles, because the answer is like, oh man, it depends.
Very much.
But it is interesting. Like, you just walk our floor, you look at our sales stats. We definitely go through seasons of like, whoa, it swings over to the AMD side for a generation, and it swings back to the Intel side. And that's just because we do the testing and we figure out the performance results, and we make recommendations accordingly. I believe right now, could be wrong. That's bad that I don't know. But I believe that on the mainstream segment, so the Core and Ryzen segment, we're still leaning on the Intel side as a better performance in most scenarios. And then on the professional side, so the Xeon versus Threadripper is like way weighted on the Threadripper side. It's like kind of like no contest. So yeah, I mean, the answer is depends. I'm just happy that both AMD and Intel with the latest gen have decided that efficiency over like raw performance is a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
I think the collective we, the world, is enjoying taking a breather from performance at all costs being the focus.
Yeah. We'll touch on this.
And then the question of like, would it be worth upgrading? It depends on what gen. If you're coming from 14th gen, no, I probably wouldn't. I mean, maybe if you're concerned over the stability issues, but still, like that should be solved. I don't think there's enough performance increase really anywhere to justify a gen over gen upgrade. And so it's a matter of like, how many generations back are you, and is this enough to prompt you? There's definitely rumors of more things coming up on the GPU side. So a lot of times people upgrade for the GPU, and whatever platform is most appropriate for them at that time is what you pick.
Yeah. As an enthusiast myself in my personal life, I would say if you're if it would be more than 1 or 2 generations. If you're on a 13 or whatever AMD equivalent 58, like I have 5800X myself, I'm not going to jump to the 9800 stuff yet. I'll wait till I tend to wait 2-3 generations. CPU is less of an issue than GPU, which Intel's. I'm really excited for Intel's next step in GPUs.
Yeah, they announced didn't they launch that?
I think I have seen some talk about. I think it's Battle Mage. Their next.
Yeah, Battle Mage. Yeah. Stories 6 hours ago, I'm seeing them.
I don't know that they're available for sale yet, but
okay.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Well,
I like that they're fighting. They're kind of fighting AMD directly. Nobody's going to catch up with NVIDIA for probably decades, but I like that. Yeah. I like that there's a good battle going on in the sort of middle to upper middle part of the price performance knee curve, because that's, I think, where most people kind of are. This, the average gamer, the average PC user kind of sits in that little curve part. And it's good to have that competition there.
I will say, like, if there's anywhere where I'm accused of being an Intel super fan, it would be here. I am really, really rooting for Intel on their Arc series, and I'll be plain to say I don't think they're there now. They're not there yet, but I really hope. I know they're going through a lot as a company right now. I really hope they stick with it. The industry needs them. Just the industry needs competition, and who else could possibly give NVIDIA a run for their money? So I love to see that competition. I don't think it's going to be battling for like the top end SKU anytime soon, but applying pressure even at the low or mid range is good for everyone.
Yeah,
including NVIDIA. Frankly, competition is good for everyone.
Yeah. I'll touch on this one before we pivot from the laptop discussion. What are your thoughts on quantum computing and Puget Systems?
Funny enough, my article number 2, I think my first article I ever wrote into like 2000 was Pentium 4 versus Athlon XP or something. And article number 2 was quantum dots and their use cases in compute and data transmission in computers. So 24 years later, it feels like we're kind of in the same place. There's not going to be a Puget Systems quantum computer on your desk anytime soon, but it's fantastically cool technology that even if is only used in huge data centers for specific cryptography use cases, is going to have trickle-down effects that I'm excited about. As technology hits, multiple walls, and how small can we make transistors, and do we go to photonics? I keep thinking back to those quantum dots article I wrote in 2000, and I still want that reality to be true, but we're not there yet.
We'll have to dig that up. I'll put it in the description or something after this. I think
that'd
be fun.
There was something Dr. Bond said 4 years ago or more when Destin from Smarter Every Day came and walked through the facility. Don said, it will happen. And it will happen because we're throwing a lot of dollars and brains at the problem. And it's pretty, there's a lot of things happening in the world that aren't great, but there's also some things happening in the world right now that just make you think, this is pretty cool what mankind can achieve when we put our minds to things.
Yes, I agree. I think it's really cool stuff all around us going on around in this space. So we're talking about laptops and how we're going to be kind of introducing a more mid-tier product line in that. And that to me ties back to what you were saying about the rack stations. And we've talked about VDI, virtual desktop interface, I think is what that stands for.
I think so.
Chris might get mad at me. So I think that kind of ties together. Especially with the rack stations thing, is that something that we kind of pushed on, or were we hearing that externally and we kind of said, oh, hey, there's a need there and pushed into that?
Yeah, a little of both. I think it was like we were hearing that need and it resonated with us and we leaned into it. And it started again during COVID times when, all right, you send all your people home and they still have to work. So we saw our customers did a variety of different things. Some of our customers said, your computer stays on your desk and we're going to put remote access software on it and you can go home and you can remote in. And that maybe half of our customers did that, maybe a little less. But it comes with costs of you have to have all the infrastructure to do that. You have to have enough internet, low enough latency. You have to have a good client that handles color reproduction well and latency really well. It's one thing to do, CAD design remotely. It's another thing to do color corrections or like sound mixing remote. So then we had a whole nother class of customers that said, forget it. We don't have time to figure this out. 2 computers for everyone. You have your home computer and your office computer. And as a seller of computers, that worked out really nicely for us, but it was really hard to feel like that was an efficient way to approach the problem. And so the solution that was kind of in the middle of those that we felt was the most sustainable and achievable solution was to say, it's not your computer to desk anymore. It is your computer, only your computer, but it's your computer in the server room. And yeah, you remote into it. And you remote into it whether you're at home, you remote into it whether you're at the office, doesn't matter. It's the same approach. And that's pretty akin to what we've done here at Puget Systems. All of our desks now, I'm sitting in the Rainier office that I reserved for this call because I don't have a desk. This is my desk right now. And I take my laptop and I plug it into a dock. And then I take that connection and I remote into my my workstation computer when I do like programming and that type of work. And that's how I work. And that's been going really well. And so we saw that as a solution for our customers also. Now, what we found with our customers, and we're hearing this echoed with multiple customers, is that all of the infrastructure needed to do VDI, true VDI. And so VDI would be, it's not a physical workstation anymore. It's a big old honking server, and you divide it up and you can get who knows how many users on one computer. And there's even really cool magic stuff you can do where it's on-demand instances that your session is saved, and then it gets restored anytime you need it. And there's like deduplication that can happen in that process. That's really cool, but it's also very complicated, and it tends to lead IT departments to cut costs and say, all right, well, if only 80% of our users are logged in at any given time on average, hey, we can reduce our IT spend 20%. And now look at all these users we can service with 20% less budget. Cool in concept, bad in execution. Because what happens is you get your 9 a.m. traffic jam. Everyone comes to the office or like wakes up, gets their coffee, sits down at their desk, and they have to wait 20 minutes to log into their virtual sessions because the IT department under-provisioned the hardware necessary to handle those loads. So we have heard from customer after customer after customer that they don't want to deal with all that, both for those reasons and for just the complexity of administering all that. They just want the simplicity of everyone has a computer, but it has to be in the server room so that it can be remoted into. So that was the birth of rack stations. Rack stations also have uses for when you need to have a semi-mobile, like an on-site. You're doing a video shoot and you need to have a rack of computers for doing dailies or some on-the-site editing.
Sure.
Or virtual production studios that it has to have, the ability to move. Rack stations are fantastic for that as well. So it's all the same goodness that's in our workstations, but it's understanding that the IT complexities of actually rolling out that hardware isn't so like monolithic now. So that's why quite a bit of emphasis on rack stations. We definitely want to provide the full VDI solutions as well, but we feel like that's first, like a next step for us as we develop our capabilities as a company, but also understanding that it's probably a step beyond where a lot of our customers are as well, or that we have our enterprise customers who's been there, done that, and they want to come back off that type of infrastructure. So another place where conservatism kind of paid off, that the big fancy solution isn't necessarily the one that gets implemented if it's out of reach of our customers.
Sure, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought about the hardware provisioning and that sort of thing being such a roadblock. That's interesting to
well, you got to run Active Directory, and you got to license your GPUs to be sliced up like that, and you have to have the whole, whether you're using Nutanix or VMware, it's just a whole level of competency that is so different than take computer, plug in computer. There's a real beauty in the simplicity of removing virtualization layer entirely. And there's probably a hybrid we can do along the way. I think Chris would disagree with me on some of this, but I remember back in the day, Wilson or Houston, we did at some trade shows like PDX LAN and even PAX back in the day, we would do a virtualized workstation. And then it had 4 GPUs, and we would do PCIe pass-through. So as far as the virtual machine knew, it got a full GPU. There's no virtualization going on here. I still kind of like that. Yeah. And I think that's a great middle ground between rack stations and full-out VDI. But I might be out to lunch on that. Sure. I'll have to listen to the experts on that.
Yeah, I remember you working on that down in production at the time. I remember coming in and playing with hypervisor or something like that. And
what did we use? What's that NAS software? Oh darn it, I'm not going to remember it. But yeah, that was way back in the day. That was 2015.
Yeah, that's really cool. Fun stuff. Let's see, just make sure we're not missing any questions. Okay. So that's kind of the past, a little bit of the year. So let's look forward. And one of my favorite things, which broke my heart when we stopped doing it, was ITX PCs. They're my favorite. I love working in them. They're a blast. The puzzle of it all is very cool. And as I've been walking the production floor, I've noticed that our R&D people, our folks there, the department, they have 8 or 10 different options out there. I think we have finally decided on one. But well, I guess, why did we stop and why did we come back?
Sure. We tend to go through cycles, and maybe it's healthy, maybe it's not. But we tend to go through cycles in our company where we get really, 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 really busy, and we have to contract what we do to preserve our ability to execute. And then there's other times where we do have more ability to bring on different technologies, and we're hungry and we're looking to expand the business, and so we expand. So we go through these expansion and contraction cycles. And in the late teens, we were in one of those contraction cycles, and that was accelerated greatly through COVID, where it just got bonkers busy, and it was like survival mode. We have to cut what we do because we have to survive this tidal wave of business that came our way, which is weird to complain about. I'm not complaining, but it was a reality. So during that time, we definitely still recognized that we had a need from our customers for small form factor computers, but we couldn't invest the resources into doing that. And so we used the Intel NUC products. It was around that same time that Intel kept growing their capacity of their NUC systems. And a lot saw that as oh, you're competing with me as a system builder. We were like, that's great. If you want to do it, we'll use your product. And so we used the, I can't remember what it was called, but the extreme version of their NUC that was able to put a really, really nice video card inside. It was a true desktop class CPU. It's a well-made little unit. And so that's what we had been using. But Intel spun off that part of the business, and we had to make the and we had a lot of unknowns from like Azus, who picked up that business, as to whether they would continue that same ethos and continue that same approach. And so we had a decision we had to make of like, all right, do we get back out of it, or do we take it on for ourselves? And given that we were in an expansion mode at that time, ITX is back on our plates. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that too. Our whole product stack is in general. So you have ITX, micro ATX, ATX, and then something bigger that we can't agree on the names for. I think it's called SSI. But the big honking computers. And that's too many segments.
Sure.
We don't need that many segments. And we happen to really like the micro ATX segment as a really nice, it's still a decently small size box, and it has a really decent amount of upgrade capability. But the fact of the matter is that our customers in those segments, they like to think about upgrading, but they generally don't.
Yeah.
And maybe that's more a commentary on enterprise customers than consumers, but they generally don't upgrade. And so when we have to choose, oh, sorry.
Oh, I remember this was years ago. There was, I think it was from sales. There's some report that said like, X number of customers bought the Fractal XL cases, saying, "Oh yeah, I want to be able to add all these hard drives and stuff." And then like 85% of them never actually added anything more to it. I thought that was interesting, and it shows that like, yeah, it's cool to have the option. Like I want to be able to, but the vast majority of the time it's not. And yeah, I totally agree that MATX fits probably 95% of the use cases where you have a video card that takes up 2 3/4 slots, and you've got one little bitty one for some sort of expansion card, USBs or whatever.
Capture card, network card, something like that.
It's enough.
So, but our aim, and this is going to take us a long time to get there, but our aim is to say the super, super big computers, they don't really need to be that big. Let's bring them down a notch. And because we can, and we're working on it with chassis providers to bring that same capability that are in the huge computers right now and bring them down one level. But as we bring them down one level, I don't really want our computers to be compressed into these two form factors that are a couple inches apart. So that puts more, I'll say pressure, but also opportunity on us to bring that lower end down as well. And my ideal would be that our future, and we're not there yet, but our future would be ITX, ATX. Those are our two options, and we can cover a variety of customer needs by doing that. And what I like about it is right now, it just brings everything like down one size from what we're doing today. But it takes a lot more like integration work to achieve that. So yeah, it's fun. Like you walk down in the R&D area, and you see all the different ITX options that we're evaluating, and the ones that don't make it get raffled off to employees internally, and the ones that do make it are going to be a product coming to stores near you soon.
Yeah, soon. That's fun.
I remember. Unraid was the name of the software we used to virtualize the GPUs.
There we go. Nice. Cool. Supply chain. We weathered some of the worst of the GPU shortages, the chip shortage, very well. And that speaks a lot to our philosophy, the company's philosophy on how we handle business, not just from the customer experience, but all the way, the whole chain, all the way from like you said, the factories. You talk to these people who run the factories and stuff, all the way through distributors and things like that. With AI blowing up, it seems to be blowing up in a similar way to crypto was, and that's part of what causes the GPU shortage. It doesn't seem to be hitting as hard, though. Can you speak as to why that is, and maybe a little bit about how we might be weathering some troubles in the future?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different facets to that conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. The thing that's like I'm thankful for, and I carry some guilt over, is that we do tend as a company to do especially well during the hard times, but I don't want hard times to be the thing that like are good for us. But yeah, as you go all the way back, I mean, in my mind, the whole chain after chain of disasters in supply chain started with, there was a tsunami in Japan that impacted hard drives, and it went from that into cryptocurrency, and then that into COVID, and then COVID into AI. So like we've been in shortage since forever. Now, as bad as that is in general for the world, we tend to outperform the average when it comes to navigating those supply chain situations. And so it works out well for us in terms of growing our business. And I guess, the reason why is very clear. Like there's no like backhand secret handshakes we're doing. It's, what I talked about with laptops is, well, if there's a handshake, I don't know it. When we talked about with laptops, where like we can't just go into a factory and command like you must do this type of design. We come in and we say we would like to be an advocate for a whole customer segment that we think will make your products better, and that's how we approach a lot of our conversations with vendors. And that does create a mutually beneficial relationship with our vendors that does give us a better relationship and better access to supply with those manufacturers. So I think it's just, be a good guy and good things come around is just our general approach at Puget. But then you have on top of that, we have the publishing we do, the testing that we do. So we have the ability to kind of have a voice into the industry that's more than just our raw volume as a system integrator supports. So in both of those ways, like whether it's how we conduct ourselves or the information we freely give into the whole industry, that's what helps us navigate our supply chain, or that's what gives us the ammunition, I guess, to navigate the supply chain issues. And then on top of that, we just have an awesome supply chain team that does a great job leveraging those capabilities or those like strengths and turning it into actual product on the shelves. So that's where we're at with AI. AI definitely feels different. Like crypto, I don't want to get into whether I, what I think about crypto or what even I think about AI. But I will say that crypto definitely goes in more of a like feast or famine. It was like really on or not. And so you would have these, GPUs that would be eaten up by the crypto miners, that it would just like fire sale. They would just buy everything. AI doesn't feel that way. I mean, AI is definitely taking up supply, but it's this like long-term sustained thing. It isn't a unpredictable, volatile type thing. So if anything, AI is a little bit easier for us to navigate because we know what to expect. It's still long-term shortage. They're going to be eating up all the GPU wafers for a long time, but like we know what we're getting into and we kind of know how to navigate that. So it hasn't been an acute problem for us. It's been a problem, but it isn't like epidemic.
Yeah. It seems too that the AI stuff is more sort of corporate angled. There's less average consumer jumping into trying to build their giant training models and things like that. It's Facebook buying up 10,000 A100s or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not some guy in his garage buying up 12 4090s.
Well, that's true. On like 3090s back in the day, we were directly competing for product with the crypto miners. Mm-hmm. This is different. This is more we're competing for factory capacity and competing for wafers. And that is the biggest concern right now is, B100s, I can't even keep up. Those, super heavy compute, I cannot fault NVIDIA for why would they take a wafer and put it into a 4090 and get $1,500 when they get $25,000 for it in a more high-end data center SKU. So totally makes sense. But that means that as a workstation and even consumer and gaming segment, we got to fight for our ability to continue as something that gets manufactured up against AI. And I think we're that's not something that is a right now problem, but we just got to be careful that the scales don't tip all the way to the data center side over time, which is another reason to say like, come on, Intel. Help spur a competition.
I was just thinking like this is a perfect opportunity for Intel and AMD both to really target and maybe snatch some of that general consumer market away from NVIDIA by offering reasonably priced products with crazy amounts of VRAM and all kinds of stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And at a time that NVIDIA might even say like, thank goodness we need help because there's just not enough capacity to meet all the different needs right now.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. I guess as we look ahead a little, as we're talking about future and things, what are some of our like key priorities and goals going into 2025? What are you most excited about to accomplish in the next year?
Well, so we've set the stage, like all the chess pieces are on the board. There's not any new ones to add. So with the work we're doing with rack stations and servers and storage and mobile and ITX, like those are all the projects. But we have a long ways to go in realizing like the same like benefits we've projected into the industry through those types of products. We've only barely started. Like take a look on our labs articles. Do you see any VDI posts? Nope, we're not there yet. Do you see any posts about different technologies for storage and the performance and the impacts of that back on post-production workflows and engineering workflows? Nope, we're not publishing about that yet. And I'm really excited about getting to that point, because as we kind of touch more on those types of customers with those needs, it's even more of a need than we saw on the workstations, because you're not going to go in as even a large company and spend 80 grand on a high-end server without knowing what you're doing. And we have the capability, like knowing how to roll out the technology, fine, that's one thing. Knowing how to optimize it for performance based on your specific workload, that's way more challenging. So I'm really, really excited about bringing that capability that our company has into those areas. But it's not easy work, because on the not consumer end, but on like the more application end of Resolve, Premiere, SolidWorks, those types of that's a very defined problem. I mean, it still kind of isn't, because there's all different codecs and plugins and things, but it's still it's a package problem. You get onto the server end, and now it's like, well, I don't know, whatever your guy wrote for the code is how it performs. And so it's not even close to one size fits all. It is customized per use case. So we have to be more and more okay with saying, here are the broad strokes. This type of work, good for this. This type of work, good for this. But then we have to work with each customer individually to figure that out for themselves. So the type of work we do with our labs team, bringing them in to consult with specific customers, and even engaging, we have some even paid services on, we'll take your work, we'll do the performance profiling, we'll take all of the goodness of what we do for our public facing labs articles as a commissioned work for your workload. Doesn't work on a workstation for $5,000. It does work on a server for $80,000. So I'm excited to be able to do that. But that's a long road we have to walk down, but that's the direction we're going.
Yeah. Oh man, that has some serious implications, because you start talking about like maybe custom support and having people who are dedicated to a certain managed account or things like that, who know their particular specific, because if there's custom implementations, then the support part has to be fairly custom too, and then that of course trickles out into everything else.
Yeah, well, that's what we're finding too on these more like server or storage oriented things, is that we can package up a product that's like, this is our product for a server, and it meets 95% of a customer's needs, and it has to be tailored to their rollout. And so we're having to do a lot of tailoring. But the size of these deployments are such that, hey, we can actually afford to put in the time to do that. So we do. I think I could talk about it, that we're doing some really cool work right now with Intel Bluefield cards in rack stations, even though there's not a validated solution for that yet. And getting the River Max and the NVIDIA teams on board with like, we want to make sure we're doing something that they'll support, but we're also doing something that no one's done yet. And that's really cool. Cool. Rack stations with Bluefield with custom cooling solutions on them. That's more of that. That's the type of stuff that we can do that's new and unique and different that I love.
Yeah. So you mentioned cooling. We only have a few more minutes left, and I hesitate to ask this question because it might be too secret stuff. And I get, so if I'm going too far, you go ahead and say no. But you, in some of your internal documentation and things, you have mentioned some interesting things surrounding cooling. I don't want to say specifics, but I know that it's something you're very excited about as well. Can you talk about some of that?
Yeah, sure.
Because it's like it's not something about Puget Systems is we haven't done proper custom loop liquid cooling in over a decade or something, and it's something that we've been very firm on because of the maintenance and just the customer experience and all that stuff is terrible. So some of that does touch on some of the liquid cooling thing, and so it's interesting to me that there might be a slight shift toward that.
Well, and it's like out of necessity. So, okay, I'm laughing because there's like a running joke that the last couple of times we've been at the Computex, like my personal mission has been anytime I see a heat pipe, I walk that direction. And I had a good sit down with Roland, a CEO of Noctua, and took a look at their factories and had good conversations with them. Fantastic company. I love talking with him. He's so fun to talk to because he's so passionate about it that he'll just like get into things, and that's fun to be a part of. Yeah, I mean, we have been pretty passionate about air cooling over liquid cooling for a number of years for the same reasons of any other of the choices we've made, that stability trumps performance. And unfortunately, with the changes and just how many watts and things are going into these products now, we have had to jump over on the Intel side to closed loop liquid cooling. We're still on air cooling on the AMD side. And that all comes down to the power profiles and the manufacturer specs and making sure that we are not taking an unreasonable sacrifice to performance in some workloads. And I think there was actually a labs roundtable you all did on this that went into this in much more detail, better detail than I'd be able to. But so that's where we're at right now, is that we do have to turn to liquid cooling in some cases. And so doing that, we're like, okay, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And so part of being out at Computex was talking with the different manufacturers and making sure that the product we put out there is the best possible product. And so that's what we're doing now. But the dream still lives. I still don't want to do that. I still want it to be that simplicity can win out. And so, yeah, there's cool stuff. There's vapor chambers. There's what I call it, thermosiphons, that you can think of it like a flexible heat pipe, but it's really more like I'm not sure what the best analogy is, but it's the simplicity of heat pipes and like the what's the word? Reliability of heat pipes, but with the flexibility of being able to put that radiator on near the outside of the chassis so you get the heat out of there. But the more we go down the road, and this is where my pipe dreams come in that I get made fun of, the more we go down the road of products that are made specifically for us, the more we can say, like, no, all right, let's talk to the heat pipe guys. Let's get something bent in just the way that I don't care that it's flexible tubing, because we don't need it to be flexible tubing, because we know exactly what the dimensions are from this socket to this chassis, and we have all the benefits of a closed loop cooler, but it's actually heat pipes. That's still my dream. It's probably crazy. I don't know if it'll ever come to bear, but I will always walk towards heat pipes anytime I see them at a trade show to try to make that dream come alive.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. That's pretty cool. We have one more question from YouTube. Yadine the Grave, I hope I said that right. Do you think China will close the gap in the chip making industry soon in terms of their own chip making process?
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, they definitely have a lot going on. I know through tariffs, there's a lot keeping the Chinese CPUs out of the U.S. right now, but it seems like they are making a lot of progress on that. I think, the greater question there is around tariffs overall. So I think this kind of comes back to what we were talking about with like strengths of supply chain. Sure. Tariffs introduce a strain into the supply chain that is no fun for anyone, and I think is something that nobody would choose to be necessary. But when it does happen, it's an opportunity for us to outperform the average, and we actually tend to do okay. So I kind of hate saying that, but it is the reality. But what it ends up doing, it just raises the price on things. But the fact is, so much of this stuff is coming out of China. Right. We have seen some pretty good movements over the past few years of moving things to Thailand, to Vietnam, and Singapore, and even Taiwan. And so, sky's not falling, but it's just more work and more cost. So, yeah. That's all I can really think of just to say on that. I'm trying not to bury my head in the sand with the tariff thing, but also been there, done that. And so I know that we can get through
it. Yeah, it'll turn out okay. Well, we have 1 minute left. So as we wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to shout out or mention or tell anybody to go check out?
Well, I want to say to Quentin, I saw your comments on your shout outs on the Spirit. Thank you for that, man. Spirit back in the day, we had the Echo, Deluge, Genesis, Spirit, Obsidian. Those were projects of love back in the day. And frankly, we still have a lot of that same kind of ethos in the company. But one of the things that I think really makes me nostalgic over that time is that was a phase of life in our company where we took everything to the extreme. Mm-hmm. We want to make a quiet computer. We want to make it silent. We want to make a reliable computer. We want to make the craziest, most reliable computer we can possibly make. And I think in the spirit of reasonableness, we've had to be a little bit more like, okay, we can't go to the extreme all the time, but it was fun when we did. And I remember the spirit being, it was on the type of company that we are, what is the most cost-effective computer we could possibly make that's still in the Puget Systems spirit? And that was the genesis of that name. So it's cool. It's cool to see that all these years later, it's still serving you well. Still interested in mineral oil cooling? My lawyers say no.
There is an aquarium sitting in the lobby. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I moved it into storage.
Empty aquarium.
Yeah, I bought one back off Craigslist because I wanted to have at least one here. No, that was also a really fun project. That the lesson, kids, is file your patents.
That's right. I think that hits us on the mark. That's easy. It went super fast. This is so good. This is great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jon, for joining us on the podcast. And I'm excited. Every year I'm going to go a little long on the outro on this one. I've been here almost 9 years, and to see where the journey that the company has gone on just in my small time of being here, and the effect that we've had on what is an incredibly massive industry, and being able to make shifts and really change people's minds on how things are done. It's been so cool. And I'm so excited for the future. Like, I just know Puget Systems is going to be a household name, like right up there with Dell and HP and stuff. People will, hey, you're getting a Puget kind of thing. And it is so cool to be a part of that. So thank you for that. And thank you.
Well, thank you to everyone here. Like, I appreciate you saying that, because really, it can be a soul grinding amount of work. There's times we take on more than we can, more than we should. And the more that we can center ourselves back on the impact that it's having, the more that makes it worth it, makes it sustainable. So yeah, I appreciate that as well.
Right on. And thank you, of course, to the audience for joining us today. I think this is our biggest turnout for a stream this year so far. So thank you all. We do this generally most of the time, first Tuesday of the month. So at 12 p.m. Pacific. So mark your calendars and such for that. I don't have a topic for next month yet. So, but stay tuned on the social media pages of Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads, all those spots. Blue Sky now too, if you're there. I'm still working on the profile, but we're there. And so, we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Bye. Thank you. Bye.